Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to Germany, and as I've spoken about a million times on the channel, I've got a huge love of traditional German beer, the Helles, the Dunkels, the Doppelbocks, and my whole love of beer started out with the Bamberg Rauch beers and my friend Daniel as well. For this review though, we're actually going to touch on a beer style that I'm not all that familiar with, and this beer in particular is one that I've just never gotten around to reviewing for you on the channel in the 1800 or so videos that we've done so far. So we're going to go to Köln this time and try one of the famous Kölsch beers. So this one comes to you from Cölner Hofbräu Früh, and we're having a taste of the legendary Früh Kölsch, which comes in at 4.8% ABV. Now, I tried this beer maybe 8-9 years ago. I'm sure I bought a bottle of this at Valhalla's Goat in Glasgow, and you know, I'd liked it. I thought it was a nice beer at the time, but I just never ever got around to reviewing it. And ironically, most of the encounters that I've had with Kölsch beers in recent years have actually been from Japanese Jibiru breweries, the little mini craft breweries that you get over there. It seems to be a very, very popular beer style amongst them for some reason. I'm not sure exactly why. Maybe just because of the drinkability and things like that. They do like their German beer styles over there. But when we want to kind of get more acquainted with a traditional beer style, the best thing to do, of course, is to actually go to the country it's from and try one of the classics. So that's what we're going to do today. But I also know there's a number of American breweries such as Trillium and things. Some of the really famous craft breweries are having a go at these styles as well. So do please give me some classic German Kölsch recommendations in the description below, as well as other ones from across the world. It would be cool to explore this beer style a little bit more and get more acquainted with it. But anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Cölner Hofbräu Früh, but I think they only do the one beer, so I'm not sure how possible that's going to be. But all the usual links are in there, like I said. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the German beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys, and you know, the support you give the channel is hugely appreciated. The reason I'm actually reviewing this beer for you now as well is that it has just appeared as a member of the regular range in Systembolaget here in Sweden. I'm filming this review for you on the 9th of August 2019, incidentally. But anyway, to tell you a little bit about the brewery history then, on to my brewery notes here. So the history of this brewery goes back to 1895 when Peter Josef Früh founded Apostelbräu, having previously been part of his family's brewery in Brühl. He was from quite a prestigious brewing family from what I gather. But apparently there were a number of hurdles for him getting the brewery to actually come to fruition. The Köln government, the Köln local government, were rather sceptical about how popular this brewery was going to be, but then it obviously went on to become one of the most popular ones in the city. A few years later though, in 1898, he decided that he wanted to retire, and he sold the brewery on to Heinrich Bedorf. But this retirement didn't last very long actually, as he returned at the turn of the century to establish the Schützenlesel at Amhof 12, basically Amhof 12 if you want to put it in English. But this became his new top fermented brewery, and it was known as the Cölner Hofbräu P. Josef Früh. And the brewery opened its door. It opened close to the cathedral in 1904. Peter died though in 1915, and his widow Gertrude took over the business with their daughters Nettie and Christel. And the brewery survived the economic depression, of course, of the 1920s, the hyperinflation, the collapse of the Weimar Republic, and kind of all of these sort of things. And then in 1930, Gertrude died, and the management of the company was taken over by Engelbert Rochels, who was the first non-family employee to run the brewery. Köln, of course, though, was almost completely destroyed by the brewing during the Second World War, and the building burned down completely almost completely in February of 1944. However, the brewery were quite lucky in that their equipment wasn't destroyed, and they were able to start the brewery running again relatively quickly after the war ended. And they were also known to have helped other breweries in the Köln area by brewing beer for them, as well as helping them kind of re-establish their restaurants and things like that. They were brewing beer for the other breweries so that they could sell that in their restaurants and then get their own businesses up and running again, which I think is pretty cool actually. But they managed to completely restore their building by 1950, and the 1960s and 70s saw them grow rapidly into a corporate company. The step up in brewing volume was initiated in 1961 by the third and fourth generations of the family management, led by Herman Müller Sr. and Edward Rolf. And it was in 1969 that Früh Kölsch was first released in bottles, and then 10 years later, in 1979, they opened up their brewery in the south of the city, which is known as Früh im Weder. But the larger brewery was however not enough to meet demand, and they constructed another brewery on the northern outskirts of the city from 1985 to 1987, and the vacant rooms in the main building were later converted in 1998 to become Köln's first Brauereikeller, basically their brewery restaurant if you like. But the fifth generation of the company took over management in 2000, and the company is still led today by Alexander Rolf and Philip C. Müller. But today they employ over 400 people, and they're producing in the region of 400,000 hectolitres of beer per year. I think they've got this beer, the classic one, they've got their Radler of course as well, which is like a beer lemonade mix, and they also have the non-alcohol one in there as well. And I think there's another one that's almost, I think it's like a spritzer or something like that, I forget the name of that. But they also have the Eden Hotel Früh am Dom and the Hof Achtsen as well restaurant, which is associated to it. And since 2013 they've also been one of the owners of the M Gold Kapis, basically the Golden Caps restaurant in the Niepes district of the city as well. A very, very famous brewery company, this one. That's a kind of brief summary of their history if you like. So, you know, if you want to try a Kölsch beer, this is probably the most readily available one to you, regardless of where you are in the world. I have seen this beer in Japan, I've seen it in America and things like that as well. So this is probably the most readily available Kölsch beer that you're going to get. And like I say, it's very cool to be able to do a review for you here on the channel of one of these traditional beers. I should have done this a lot earlier, to be honest with you. Before we taste the beer as well, I'll just tell you a little bit about the Kölsch style in fact, and this was interesting for me because like I said, it's not one that I'm overly familiar with. Kölsch beer apparently is one of the most strictly regulated types of beer in Germany. It must be pale, highly attenuated, hoppy, bright, filtered, and also brewed in compliance with the Reinheitsgebot, the Bavarian purity law that later became the German purity law. But this is a top fermented beer style. You'll find them coming in between 4.4 and 5.2% alcohol by volume, and they'll usually always be around 20 to 30 IBUs. And the beer style actually is regulated by the Kölsch-Konvention. But usually what happens is it undergoes a warm fermentation and then it's cold conditioned, like lager beers, the Helles, the Dunkels, the Schwarz beers and things like that. But generally the brewing process is regarded as being similar to the Dusseldorf Alt beer. That's another beer style I do need to explore for you on the channel a little bit more as well. But the beers from Heinrich Reisdorf, Gaffelbecker, and then this brewer, the Cölner Hofbräu Früh, are considered as, you know, some of the big traditional examples of this beer style. So yeah, that's a brief history for you then of the brewery itself, and also a little bit about the actual beer style. So let's get on to actually tasting the beer then. Like I said to you at the start of the video, we can get rid of the brewery notes now for this one. This one is a 4.8% Kölsch beer, and you know, this label is very, very famous. The three crowns which appear on a lot of things in Germany. I'm not sure, these ones are a little bit different to the three crowns that you would see, for example, here in Sweden. I know there was also a Drei Kronen Brauerei down in the Franconia region, not far from Bamberg. I did review one of their beers for you on the channel a few months back. I think the three crowns are supposed to represent the Holy Trinity, if I remember rightly. Germany, of course, is, you know, I think it's about 2/3 Protestant, 1/3 Catholic, if memory serves me correctly, and it's kind of quite a conservative and still fairly Christian country compared to a number of others in Europe. But there you can see, there is the Früh Kölsch bottle cap on this one, which is kind of cool. I'll definitely be keeping a hold of that. But yeah, so nicely presented beer, this one. You can also see on the back, this one is also protected by the European Union. So Kölsch beer is a regionally recognised product, the same as like Bayerische beer or Scotch whisky or champagne and stuff like this as well. So yeah, nicely presented that. Let's get it out and we will get on with the tasting then. One thing I should also say about this this beer is that normally it's sold in half-litre bottles, but the ones that we get up here in Systembolaget are the 330ml ones, and you should serve this beer apparently in a mug kind of similar to this one. I don't have a traditional German mug. This one actually comes to you from Mikkeler, just over the water in Copenhagen. This is one that I bought at the Ramen Tolbiru restaurant in Nuremberg. But yeah, let's see this then. There's quite a lot of carbonation sticking to the side of this one. So yeah, let's see if we can get the whole thing in there. So yeah, as you can see with this beer, the head's just going to fade away, and that the Germans watching this video will be having a heart attack, because it's kind of a given that German beer must have a head on it. I rinsed this glass out just before I did the video as well, so yeah, it's a bit strange. But yeah, as you could see that there was about a half finger of a frothy white coloured head on this one. It was kind of creamy, if you like, in terms of its colour, but you can see this is a crystal clear pale golden straw colour, this one. If I put my fingers behind the glass, you can see immediately this is a crystal clear beer. You can see the carbonation is quite active in this one and heading up towards the bottom of that head there. So you know, it looks really quite nice actually. I have to say that about this beer. It's kind of what you would expect. I did say that these beers are meant to be kind of hoppy and unfiltered, so that makes absolute sense with this beer in terms of its appearance. Incidentally, you can apparently also get what is known as a Weiss Kölsch, which is basically an unfiltered version. So if you are watching, do give me some recommendations of those as well. I'd be curious to try the unfiltered versions actually. But don't confuse that with the Hefeweizens and Weiss beers and stuff like that too. But of course Germans would call it a Weizen or a Hefeweizen rather than a Weiss beer, I think. But yeah, nice looking beer, this one. Let's take a look at the aroma and just see how we get on then. Right, that's quite nice. So with this beer then, what I would say with this, straight away you're going to notice that typical bready German malt in there. German malt is distinct in the fact, for the reason that it's very, very smooth. Even the Weirmann malts from Bamberg, for example, they're a prime example of that. But you can smell that lovely white bready quality just forming the base of the beer. When you take a little bit more of a sniff of it, it does start to become a little bit more sort of grainy and things like that. It definitely starts to lean a little bit more towards the grainy side of things later on. You're also getting a little bit of a kind of biscuity note out of this one. It reminds me a little bit of McVitie's digestive biscuits. As I keep saying, I'm not sure if you can get those in Germany, because I know that some of my German friends, they used to have the British shops because they were close to the British military bases and stuff like that, and they quite liked the McVitie's digestive. Some of my good friends from Germany also love Iron Brew, the Scottish part of the Scottish staple diet, of course. But yeah, I like how this, how the aroma in this one goes together. I mean, to me, the aroma of this one, it doesn't come across as being overly different to Pils. It's definitely within at the same end of the spectrum as a Pilsner, for example. It smells a little bit more biscuity and bready and things like that too. That's the thing that would make it a bit distinct for me. The Kölsch beers, I think, are a little bit more kind of bready and buttery and sort of biscuity, if you like, in their aromas compared to a regular Kölsch beer, to a regular Pilsner beer rather. But yeah, that smells pretty nice actually, I have to say. I like these beers. They come across as very fresh and very crisp. Of course, on top of that, you've got those typical German noble hop qualities. It's probably very likely that it's Hallertau or Tettnanger hops that they're using in here. So you get a nice little bit of that slight earthiness, that almost slightly sweet earthiness that you'll find from German hops. You get that nice little bit of floral aromaticity as well. It does come across as being very fresh, this beer actually, so I think it must have been very recently bottled. And of course you're getting a nice little bit of a grassy note out of this one as well, and a little bit of that kind of grassy, almost slightly kind of peary, appley, sort of orchardy ester. There's a little bit of that coming out of this one, but the fruity side of this beer, because you always get a little bit of fruity ester, to me it comes across as being very sort of teensy little bit of a slightly lemony citrus in there, mixed in with the grassy notes from the beer, but it's quite peary and appley rather than anything else. So yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But we're going to have a taste of this one now and just see how we get on. So this one is the Früh Kölsch from the Cölner Hofbräu Früh in Köln in Germany. A beer that I've been meaning to get around to for quite a long time. Incidentally, I think, you know, Früh literally means, Frühling is of course spring in German. Früh just means like the early Kölsch. So basically this means, I think it would literally translate to being like old Kölsch or something like that. But let's get stuck into this one then. Slange, Skål, Prost. Yeah, I mean, this is good. You know, I like these beers. When it comes to This is one of the things I always find very interesting about German brewing, if you like. When beers are produced on the mass scale, it's it's a different art to brewing, brewing beers in small batches, as a number of breweries do. And one of the things that's always impressed me about German breweries, especially the big ones like this, is that they can have, the quality, the standard of quality control in Germany is crazy. They're very, very good at that in Germany, at brewing on the big scale. And it's interesting for me trying something like this, because I know, because my girlfriend is Japanese, of course, you can really see when you try a traditional beer like this, you can see the influence that it's had on the likes of, Asahi and Sapporo and stuff like that. These big breweries that are over in Japan, you can see where the influence for a lot of these beers come from. In fact, there was a very good brewery I encountered in Greece, come to think of it, who had a beer that I remember tasting kind of very, very similar to this one. So obviously this Kölsch beer style is one that has influenced a hell of a lot of breweries across the world. Yeah, I really like. I like this one actually. This is definitely one of these beers that you could session quite a few of. I mean, for me, it's a bit of a shame that I haven't had this beer in like 8-9 years now that I think about it. And I said the same when I tried Pilsner Urquell for the first time, because those are, when you're doing beer reviews like this, you leave the beers that you see all the time and go for the ones that you think, oh, I won't find that again. It's a bit of a shame. I really should be. I should make more of an effort with that in the channel over the next little while to review these more traditional beers. But if you're a fan of lager beers and stuff like this, this is one that is definitely going to tick the boxes for you. So let's examine the flavour of this one a little bit more closely then. Too easy to drink this. That's one of the things. Very good session beer. So straight away with this one then, you're going to feel a little bit of that malty, that typical German malty quality, just blank at the middle of your tongue. Once it kind of thickens out a little bit, that's when you start to get a kind of bready flavour out of it. There's definitely a nice little bit of a kind of, there is definitely a little bit of a biscuity, kind of buttery kind of thing coming out of this one, which is quite nice. A little bit, I'm not sure if that'll be a little bit of, kind of diacetyl or something like that, but I think it's very, very nice how that kind of goes together. I like it. It's not quite strong enough in terms of its brown sugary flavours to be fully caramel, but in the middle of your palate there's definitely this biscuity, buttery type quality just sitting on top of that sort of bready backbone, if you like. And the further you go into the aftertaste, it does dry out a little bit, and just become a little bit more kind of grainy. The flavour, the biscuity flavour in this one, as I said earlier, it really does remind me of it really does remind me of these McVitie's digestive biscuits that I always go on about. I'd love a good McVitie's digestive. But yeah, that's ridiculously easy to drink. It is nice, that. Good summer beer, this, incidentally. That's somewhere I'll need to go, as I will need to go to Köln. My dad doesn't need much convincing to go to Germany, so see if I can convince him to go to Köln, and we'll check out the traditional beers in Köln and Dusseldorf. But yeah, this is nice. This I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this again. As I said, disappointed in myself that I've left this beer so long to review. But on the hoppy side of things, then, back corners of the palate, you've got a little bit of that typical, that slightly sweet earthiness that you'll get from German traditional noble hops. As you come further forward from that, you start to get a little bit more of a kind of floral aromaticity, and then round the very front curve of the palate, it's just a little bit lighter and more grassy, actually. And I would say with the fruity side of this beer, it does really lean towards that kind of grassy side of things as well. As I always say, the fruity esters in a beer that are extracted from the hops, they'll come out in that little oily bubble that you get just behind the front curve of your palate. And for me, this one is leaning a little bit more towards that very slightly lemony, grassy type citrus. There is a little bit of a kind of there is a little bit of that sort of peary, appley ester that you would expect, those kind of orchardy fruits in this one. Yeah, it definitely has a little bit of that. But to me, this one definitely leans a little bit more towards that, the sort of grassy citrusy side of things. But like I say, overall, this is a really, really nice beer. I mean, in terms of complexity and stuff, this is by no means the most complex beer that you're going to come across. And I think generally, you know, the Kölsch beer isn't one that's really known for complexity. It's more known for being a kind of nice, easy drinking beer, and that's probably the reason, as I was saying earlier, why it's so popular in Japan and things like that. You really can see the influence that this beer style has had on beer brewing, and particularly on macro beer brewing throughout the world, in fact. But the thing is, this is a beer that I would assume it's very, very difficult to get this style kind of perfect in line with the traditional beers, but I really like how this one goes together. I'd be very curious to try more of the Japanese versions of this, some of the little G-Biru breweries and stuff, and also some of the American brewed things as well. So do let me know where, you know, as I say in the comment section below, do let me know where I can try, which other traditional breweries I should look at, of course, and where in the world I should be looking for other Kölsches too. That would be interesting to know. So in terms of the mouthfeel of this beer then, I would describe this one as being kind of, it's fairly light-bodied, this beer. I don't think there's much doubt about that. Yeah. Definitely quite a light-bodied beer, this one. Carbonation does have a good little bit of crispness to it. The mouthfeel overall does lean a little bit towards the oily side of things. This to me comes across as one of the more oily German beer styles that I've come across before, but I like that about German beer. It is quite crisp, but it still also is quite smooth. I always describe German beer as having the Brauhaus smoothness. Germans probably laugh at me for saying that, but this beer, it is a little bit oily and crisp, but it does have that typical smoothness that you would expect of a German beer. As I said, the malt base in this one has that nice smoothness to it. It thickens up the further you go into the aftertaste and then dries out and becomes a little bit more grainy, but it's got a little bit of that biscuity sweetness in there too. In terms of hoppy bitterness, I suspect that this beer might be about, I think this one might be the full 30 IBUs. I'm not quite sure about that. It's either 25 or 30 IBUs, this one, so it does have a good little bit of hoppy bite to it, and you've also got a nice little bit of a fruity note in there as well, as I said, leaning towards that kind of grassy, fruity ester too. But overall, a really nice beer, this one. Bit ashamed of myself that I haven't reviewed this one earlier for you on the channel, but you know, better late than never, and hopefully this kind of sets off the tone of reviewing a few more Kölsch beers on the channel for you over the coming months and things like that. So as I say, do give me your recommendations in the comment section below. But let's leave it at that for this one then. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite Kölsch beers from across the world are as well, and I will catch you guys very soon. This one is the famous Früh Kölsch, coming in at 4.8% from the Cölner Hofbräu Früh in Köln down in Germany. So yeah, pleased to do this review, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it. You'll see more German reviews over the next little while, no doubt. Until the next time, Slanges now, Skål, Prost. Make sure you try this beer if you haven't.